Hello everybody, and welcome back to Isekai Shikkaku, episode 4, in which we will probably see how the meeting with those Suzuki and Kotaro went. I mean, I say meeting, but it's gonna be more of a confrontation, isn't it? I wonder if we're gonna resolve that whole entire thing in today's episode, or are we gonna have to wait 2 days apparently until the resolution? Yeah, I'm a little bit late with this episode, but oh well, happens. And as they say, better late than never, right? What happened in the previous episode? In the previous episode, we met a girl in the Badlands area with dragons and fire and lava and whatnot. And before we met her, a dragon attacked our team. Right, dragon attacked Osamu, Annette, and Tama, and the girl arrived to help them. Essentially, right? That was Valdelia, however you pronounce it. She arrived, she spoke some magical, funny words to the dragon, and that apparently was enough to placate it a little bit. And yeah, she told our group to, move on, it's no place for them, you should go. And the group mentioned that Osamu is another worlder, and Valdelia apparently didn't like that very much and attacked them. During that fight, Valdelia turned out to be a very, very powerful, but not quite as powerful as Osamu's power of just bullshitting his way out of any sort of situation with vague philosophy. And the exact same thing happened here, where Valdelia was just completely taken aback and, what our other ways can say it, gobsmacked is one that I really like, stumped, all those, words she was, and eventually just let go. Not after mortally wounding Osamu, or seemingly so at least. So Annette and Tama beelined it with Osamu for the... no, not really. They were unconscious. And it was Melos, Annette's familiar, who turned into a flying carpet of some sort and just got them all to the next temple, where they got their healing and everything is fine now. We also got a little bit of a more... or did it happen in the previous episode? Like the one before that? I'm not sure. No, I think it happened in episode 3, not in episode 2. A goal of visiting all of the temples, right? Because Satchan might have appeared at any other of the temples. There aren't that many. There's only 4 in the whole wide world, seemingly. But they are spread apart, and we will have to visit them all to ask for Satchan. Assuming she introduced herself as Satchan, which is not a given. Right, Osamu gets healed, everybody gets healed. We have some nice time spent in the town square, and we get some time spent with Isha. Isha, who is somewhat of like Annette's senpai, something thereabouts is the relationship, and she is very much disillusioned with other worlders. She believes that all of them are, scum, all of them are self-absorbed, and they don't deserve a good girl like Annette, handling them, and Annette shouldn't be doing that because she's too pure, too soft and whatnot, and dealing with other worlders would just make her bitter, and we wouldn't want that to happen. Which is why Isha was very very happy. She said that she expected Annette to leave her job, essentially, because Annette sent a letter that she's gonna go with Osamu through Melos, but Melos didn't deliver it, so it's treated as her abandoning her post, something like that. Then we get Osamu stuck in a piece of armor, and then we had him talk with Isha a little bit. Not so much trying to convince her that he's one of the good ones, but that was essentially the effect, somewhat, of that whole discussion. In the meantime, or rather before that happened, I think, Annette and Isha were talking, and they were harassed by one Kotaro, who's an otherworlder who has the power of creating money out of nothing, and of course he was flaunting it, and wanted to invite them for some fun. He got injured in the process, unfortunately, and I thought all this time that he's just gonna be a one-off joke character that's not gonna reappear ever again, and was there just to illustrate the point of otherworlders being scum. But lo and behold, he did appear. He did appear together with one Suzuki, who arrived to the town announcing that the Demon King is dead, and the king is dead, long live the king. And the king this time is gonna be the Otherworlder as a collective ruler. Not so much though, because we know that there's like a single Otherworlder who now sits on the demon world throne. So he's probably gonna be the overall ruler. But of course there's plenty of other Otherworlders who are gonna be vying for any semblance of power. Right, as they say, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's exactly what's happening here. Although there's an argument to be made that those people were corrupted even before that, so they're just simply showing their true self. Kotaro is buddies with Suzuki and pointed at Annette or Isha, at them, as the people who injured him, and it started a big thing where they're gonna be attacked by Suzuki, I believe. I believe because we don't really see entirely what happens, we just kinda cut there, and then we just see a bit of a flash forward, the city burning, and Osamu just, strolling around being like, yes, finally I have my muse, now I can write. Destruction and death, oh yeah, that's my element. So we'll see how that goes. There was also that bit with Osamu trying to write, but not having much success with it. He just tore the pages and threw them aside, and that is shown also in the opening, so maybe that's gonna be his newfound power, something like that. I don't know. We'll see. Not gonna lie, it would be very interesting if he actually doesn't get any powers until the very end, besides like poison resistance maybe. And just, continues winning, quote-unquote, the fights by either instilling deep despair in his enemies or by doing some, philosophizing that convinces them to let go, or, stuff like that. But if he does get a power, like, I don't know, writing something down and that thing becoming a reality or whatever, I wouldn't mind that either particularly much. So, I think that about covers the previous episode. In today's episode, I expect us to see what led to that flash forward, at least, if not the whole entire like resolution of the current situation. This show has a fairly fast pacing, so it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Also, one important bit, I guess, Valdelia was the Demon King's daughter. It wasn't stated outright, but she clearly is, mourning someone, and she introduced herself as the Demon Lord, and we know that Demon Lord is dead, so probably the daughter. And it also explains her dislike for Otherworlders, to name it lightly. And yeah, now I think we're covered. Now I think we can just start watching this episode, right? Shall we? To do that, you will need your subs. There we go. To follow along with me, I'm gonna need my sound to hear what's going on in the show. I think I can lower the camera a little bit. Yeah, I think that's sufficient. And I'm gonna have to ask you for support. Support the channel if you want monetarily on Patreon, YouTube down below, or not. Share my content, spread the word. It costs you nothing and helps a lot. And with that, we can start watching Isekai Shikkaku episode 4 in 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, this bit. That's about where we cut. Yeah, mind control. About what I expected. Interesting. And yeah, you let your guard down. How can we undo it, I wonder? Could it be that Osamu is impure enough to actually, you know, resist it? Yeah, you're not gonna have much choice but obey if he can just turn anybody into a slave, right? And also, yeah, there's the fact that he can just destroy the city if he so desires. Yeah, I think some of Osamu's bullshittery is gonna be needed here. I just wonder what exactly. Because here's the thing with, like, mind control powers, they are always very hard to counter without some sort of a bullshit, right? Either one of the characters is, for one reason or another, resistant to that power, or there is something that can reverse it, or there is some, I don't know, limitation that the user didn't think of, or, you know, there's always some sort of a bullshit. Assuming, again, the mind control power can be countered in the first place, because it's not always a given. Now here the clear limitation is the need for physical contact, right? So if you just, I don't know, shoot him from afar, chances are you can defeat him and dispel the magic. But Osamu isn't particularly, you know, long-ranged, unless we treat words as being a long-ranged weapon, and words being his weapon in the first place. Okay, so I guess this is the flash forward or thereabouts. Oh, he's still stuck in the armor. True. Hmm. uh, well, that was easy. I expected him to use his sleeping pills, but apparently not. Some of them, yes. So it is a case of power corrupting. Meaning, if you don't have a power or have very little power, you're not gonna get corrupted by it, right? Which would certainly make Osamu a standout here with how little power he has, right? And we'll figure something out. Yeah, that's the flash forward from the previous episode. Yeah, and he simply lost the ability to give a fuck. Poison? Yes, he's gonna drink it. Nah, we're going through the front door. I mean, I guess it would make sense for, uh, Osamu's preferences, right? The tragic story and whatnot. Yeah, right? Seems like something he would write. Oh, I thought he can use mind control remotely, but it's just controlling the existing pets. Okay, what kind of bullshit? Oh, Melos, I guess. Yeah, I guess the armor is strong after all. Hmm. Good thing they were novice level spells then. Okay, what's the next bullshittery? Poisonous blood? Poisonous blood. Exactly. That's gonna be his power, isn't it? Yep. You could say that. Right, he doesn't really have a combat ability, does he? Can't really fight with coins. Unless he can, like, spawn them remotely. I mean, you could spawn coins into your opponent's lungs, for example, right? Maybe. Unless you need, like, enough space for a coin to be spawned. Okay, so what's gonna be the next bullshit? No, it's very tragic, just tragic enough for him to take interest in. Oh, the standard power of the Nakama breaking out of the mind control. Okay, we're again with the theme of making the decisions yourself. Yep. Classic power of the Nakama. Oh? Are we inside of her mind? I would guess. Memories? No, inside of her mind. And Osamu is symbolically getting inside, breaking the cage. No, just words of encouragement. Or whatever other kind of words. Well, that was easy. I mean, easy, as easy as power of the Nakama tends to be. Okay, how are we dealing with Suzuki then? If Isha is occupied, Annette is unconscious, and Osamu doesn't really have any combat ability besides poisonous blood. Not as overpowered as you thought it was. Hmm? Why would he immediately jump for suicide? uh... Okay. Sure. Oh? What are we doing exactly? Is it supernatural or is it him just relieving the past? Okay, I guess that's why he compensated by making others his pets. And now that he finally did have courage up for that, he was stopped. Does that have something to do with it, or... I guess that's the Isekai moment. does the gift you get have something to do with why you were unhappy as a human? It probably does, doesn't it? I guess Kotaro was unhappy because he was living in poverty, and that's why he has the ability to create money. He was unhappy because he was being controlled by others, so now he has the power to control others. Right? Like this sort of a reversal. Right. You might have your power, but it doesn't necessarily change your demeanor, does it? That's actually a very good point, isn't it? Just getting powers doesn't change the person. Just enough despair. That was fast. Also, not the best handwriting. Hmm. Oh, is that gonna be his power? Oh, title drop. Magic? Magic, apparently. And Osamu, of course, just, just takes it. The pages from his book are just floating in the air, but there's magical glow. Of course. Is this gonna, like, un-isekai him? Yeah. He's getting un-isekai'd. So how does un-isekaiing work? Do you wake up in the cab of a truck? Masaka even. Apparently, yeah. Writing. And then it disappeared, so it's like... Huh. Seems to be the case, yeah. Which I guess means there are other wielders who will need an isekaiing. I mean, there's Kotaro. Yeah, does he not realize what he did? Or was it like the Demon Slayer where it's just their imagination? Finn? No, not quite yet. New casket? Or old casket? New one. The old one had red lining, I think. You really should put some wheels on it. Or put it on a cart. So I'm assuming he's like the one and only person who can send Otherworlders back? No. He already had some, propensity for it. Is that the correct word here? Propensity? I'm not sure. He already had an inclination towards it. Yeah, I'm gonna use a simpler word. Very good question, actually, yeah. Is that what we're gonna see in the after credits? Assuming there is after credits? Suzuki's life in Japan? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Okay. So, we finally, fully got the ball rolling, right? We have a goal, overarching goal. We have a set of steps towards that goal. We have a potential different goal, right? We have a means to achieve it, right? We have all the, markings of a proper adventure, you could say. I actually like Osamu's power here. I was kind of afraid of what they're gonna be when they get revealed, right? I thought it might be something like he writes the word, and thus Suzuki lost his powers, and places a period, and that makes Suzuki lose his powers, or something like that. Something actually overpowered, in any isekai. But not quite. Not quite. Yeah. Suzuki's life in real world, I guess. Yeah, can't exactly talk about that, can you? Turning his life around a little bit. Cue a track. No. To be continued. Why are you leaving this? Oh. I thought it's like to be continued as in, to be continued in the next episode, but I guess it's to be continued, like the slip of the paper from Osamu's story about Suzuki. And I was about to ask, why are you leaving something like that would otherwise be shown in, the finale as a teaser for season 2, but in episode 4? That's not it. Okay, let's watch this one again. There we go. The power to control others because he himself was easily controlled by others. Interesting. Interesting. Makes sense why Kotaru's power is what it is. How would it work with Osamu's power, the like what was the reason of Osamu's sadness, really? Right? Why was he miserable? I actually don't know. Uh, I guess he was maybe miserable because he did not like his art, his writing, right? He thought that he's not writing very good things, maybe something along those lines, right? And I guess that would give him the power to write good. But this goes beyond that. This also goes to like send those people back. So what would that have to do? Send them back so that they can continue their story in real world, not in fantasy world as a means of escapism, but rather in the real world, like the opposite of escapism. So Osamu's powers have to do with creating real stories of real people in real world, which might have to do with his despair caused by his perceived inability to create real stories about real people in real world. Right? Maybe something along those lines. I'm not familiar with like real Osamu Dazai's story. Like, what were the reasons for his depression? What was he exactly writing about? Right? I don't know that. Maybe if I knew that, I would be able to make a bit of a better guess. If you're familiar with his character, if you're familiar with his works, then let me know in the comments if I'm close or not even, or what is like your interpretation of Osamu's powers here. I'm glad we have that bit established, though, that powers have to do with the reason for the person's sadness, because it will allow us to understand the people that we meet a little bit better, right? When we learn about their power, it will allow us to understand the reason for their sadness and thus how they changed after gaining that power and why they changed, right? Bullshittery number one. Punch, donk. That's what otherworlders really are like. Not only did he use his gift for his selfish desires, his greed has become completely unstoppable and he's lost control. Wasn't like that when he came to this world. Quite weak-willed man. Right, people compensate, right? People compensate way much for what they did not have, for what they missed, right? That's like one of the theories, I guess, quote unquote, why bullying exists in schools, for example, right? What makes a bully? Well, the bully being bullied, maybe at home, maybe he's being abused by their parents, or maybe they have a hard like financial situation or whatever, and if the bully is always, put down in their life outside of the school. So in the school, they're putting others down as a means of, rebuilding their, I don't know, feeling of self-worth or whatnot, right? That's kind of how humans work, right? If you were if you were raised in abject poverty, and then you get access to some money, people tend to overspend then, and they still live in poverty, but now they have loads of shit all around their house, right? Like they have 7 different phones and 5 TVs and a bookshelf full of expensive wine and scotch and whatnot, right? But they live in poverty because they make up for their poverty by overspending money way too much. That's kind of how it works. So I guess That's what Suzuki is doing, right? All this time he was being controlled, and now he makes up for his life of being the one being controlled by now him being the one controlling, right? Then again, it's not always the case. It was the case in case of Suzuki, like very clearly. But it's really not always the case. Sometimes a bully is a bully because they're a bully. Sometimes people are just garbage. Sometimes there is no explanation for why someone is evil, quote unquote. They just are, right? It could be some sort of a mental issue. Sure, yeah, absolutely. It could be just how they are. There's plenty of stories of even like young children. It's surprising how young a child can be to already be evil, right? There was that movie Omen, I think, about like a little kid who was like the second coming of Satan or something like that, right? And causing all sorts of different things to happen. There was Lucius, the game, right? Kind of also around that idea, and it's kind of sort of based on real life. Like there are actual legit stories of like a 4-year-old grabbing a knife and trying to kill their parents. Like legit. It's a thing. Now, I'm not saying it's demonic possession or whatever, absolutely not, but you know, sometimes they just start young and then by the age of 6 they're skinning cats in the backyard, right? So it's not always the, bad childhood that's an explanation. That was a tirade, just completely off the topic, so let's continue. Let's get back on track. How truly interesting. He's exactly the kind of man who excites my sensitivities, isn't he, right? A man who's so weak, who's so lacking something. Then he gets that something. Then he gains the strength, but then it turns out that it doesn't help. He's still lacking the things that he's been lacking. He still doesn't have the strength that he didn't have. Now he can be a little bit more boisterous. Now he can be a little bit more cruel. But ultimately, he's still the very small man that he was. He did not grow whatsoever, right? A truly tragic story of a man who got what he wanted, and yet that did not help him. Something perfect for Osamu. I actually wonder if the stories of those otherworlders that Osamu is going to be interacting with have some basis in his writing, right? Like, did he maybe write a similar story to the story of Suzuki, for example, at some point? I should probably look into just getting a very basic idea of what Osamu was writing about. How can you be so carefree? Right, poison. Oh, I misinterpreted the gesture. He is pointing that, oh, look, empty. But I thought he's like, hey, want some? No, not quite. There is a bag there. Oh, there is. Oh, there is. Right on the screen. I like to base my novel on you. A man gains more power than he deserves and falls to his own greed. I'm intrigued by your profoundly human experience, right? It is profoundly human. Getting a lot of something and then promptly choking on it. Pack of stray wolves. Now, thankfully, that's easy to deal with. Another little bit of bullshittery, being Melos in a helmet. I mean, bullshittery. It did have, a little bit of foreshadowing, maybe, I guess you could say, but still kind of bullshit that Melos just appeared in the nick of time. Number 1, pet and toxic blood. Cool. And Osamu didn't even react to being bitten. trump cards are meant to be held until the end, sure. And of course the power of the Nakama. As I was saying early on, that mind control powers are usually very hard to figure out, to break, to counter. Well, this is one of the ways. Just the power of the Nakama. Just, this is not you, you're being controlled. Remember all the good times we shared together, right? And then the controlled person has their knife, and they're like, ugh, no, I'm not gonna do that, right? And that's basically exactly what's happening here. Not, make no mistake, I'm not holding it against this show, against the story, but this is exactly what's happening right now. I know you're a bird in a cage, but at the same time, it has that nice, like, Osamu spin on it, where it's not, like, purely power of the Nakama, but rather the power of, I don't know, philosophy? Kinda, a little bit. The power of psychotherapy? A little bit, right? Like, the angle isn't, remember all the good times we had together. The angle is, you are your own person. You make decisions for yourself. Don't let others cage you. Don't let others influence your decisions. You are in control of your own life, right? That, like, a little bit like life coaching thing here. So even though the idea is the same, the spin is different and very interesting, very cool. Yeah, stabby stab, and the spell is gone. My overpowered skill. Right. I was wondering why he did what he did right now, right? Like, why would he do that? He still has the skill. He could just run and continue using and abusing it, right? But I guess it makes sense now that we know a little bit more about him, right? He is still very much just a very small man, right? And anything that just didn't go according to his plan, he thought he's invincible right now, but he was proven to not be. And that's enough to push him over the edge, because his only hope, that's how I interpret it at least, the only hope that he had for, I don't know, leading a good life or whatever, or making up for his deficiencies, or whatever you want to call it, was that his skill is overpowered and unbeatable, but now it was proven to be beatable. So he jumps into the only, solution that he knows of. He was at the top of the world, tumbled down like 100 meters below, and instead of trying to climb back, he just tumbled down the rest of the way. I'm in the middle of writing a book about you. Yeah, this is cool. I really like how scary Osamu can be here, in that very, I don't know how to even word it, but in that way that I really find appealing, right? He's not scary in that he's overpowered or whatever. He's scary in his calmness, he's scary in his lack of reaction, in his just complete, this, right? I like it. And this, just nonchalance, yeah, that's the word I was missing. Just nonchalantly grabbing that dagger as if it was nothing. It's scary when a person is like, rid of their inhibitions. If a person is not scared of damaging themselves, that is scary. Like, on an instinctual level to us humans, right? Like, the proper thing to do is to avoid injury, and if you don't avoid injury, well, that is scary. That has something to do, I would say, just like the, whatchamacallit, Uncanny Valley, right? There are various factors that can change a person's appearance ever so slightly, like some muscles are a little bit more tense and stuff, some things that can change a person's actions, like here, how the person behaves, behavior, not actions. And we find them, scary, like people with rabies, for example. It's extremely fucking unsettling. Yeah, you can look up footage of people with rabies, and it's so incredibly unsettling that I'm really finding it hard to put it into words. And they look, perfectly human, right? Like they didn't grow horns or purple lattice on their face or whatever, but the change in behavior, the change in their facial muscles, right? That alone is very scary. And seemingly the change in behavior, right? Grabbing someone's knife without actually even paying attention to it, that goes against our sensibilities, and that is scary. I'm rambling a lot today, aren't I? And we get an explanation in the backstory. Always bullied, tried to commit suicide, but didn't even have the courage to do that. And now that he did have the courage to do that, seemingly, he was denied that opportunity. Suzuki the hero. Must use the gift to defeat the Dark Lord. Total obedience. Yeah, this is my power. I like this bit. Like, sure, he did get the powers, but it didn't change him as a person. Right? The sheer fact of gaining powers did not change him. And I find it something... it's very common in isekai stories. And always gives me like a little bit of a pause. Briefly, because then I just continue reading it, right? But it always briefly gives me a pause when a character who's like, I mean, the way an isekai story usually goes, the biggest loser of all losers, right? Everybody shuns him, nobody likes him. He wanted to get a girlfriend and he invited one of the girls for a date, but it turned out it was a setup, and people were waiting with cameras for him and laughing at him and taking photos, and oh, he's, the worst of the worst and whatnot. And then he gets isekai'd, gets superpowers, and he's the epitome of confidence and machoism, and he gets a harem of beauties, and he, stands up to the king and whatnot, right? It doesn't work that way. After a time, sure, absolutely. I can see getting powers changing a person over time, right? Sure. There is like no doubt about it whatsoever, but not immediately. And I like that this show has a little bit more of a realistic approach to it, right? Like, Suzuki was a cast out. He was that very timid and very easily bullied and very easily intimidated person who just shakes whenever he has to make a call to order some pizza, right? And that didn't change with him gaining powers, right? Only over time. Cool. Someone who suffered constant failures in his old world was suddenly granted power and made a hero. Do you really believe he'd save an alien world? That's actually a good question, isn't it? I would argue, yeah. I would argue yes. If you actually are like a well-adjusted person, except you were dealt a shitty card in life, then if your life turns around, then you continue being a well-adjusted and naturally good person, right? That doesn't change you. So if Suzuki was actually like good at heart, for the lack of a better term, he would not have done what he did. He would get this power and he'd be like, oh, cool, I can do so much good with it, right? That would be his first thought. They're asking me to save the world. Well, I'm gonna. I can be useful, right? I can be. I have the power now. People are gonna, like me if I help them, right? Oh, you need defeating the wolves. Sure, I'm gonna defeat the wolves for you. Absolutely. It's gonna make a person like me, right? But that's not where his mind went. So something has to be said a little bit about nature versus nurture, perhaps, but different people would use different powers differently. Not that I could even commit evil properly. Could you not, really? It seems to me like a very, proper commitment of evil. Unless you mean this, like, final blunder here. My novel based on me is finally complete. He's a fast writer, isn't he? I mean, with a, writing like that, then no wonder. And also with Japanese characters being able to convey much more meaning in much fewer characters. Miserable man who, despite hoping to live as a hero in this world, could become neither a hero nor a villain due to his own weakness. That's what it is all about, isn't it? You could have the potential to be a hero or to be a villain, but it all just depends on you. You could become neither, you could become either. No longer heroic, no longer allowed in another world. He wrote in blood. That's his power, apparently. But unfortunately, this cannot be called a masterpiece, so yeah, not yet. Not yet a masterpiece. It's good, but not perfect. And that's you get sent back to your OG world. Didn't have a gift before, but now skill writing storyteller. And then it just vanished. So it's a, conditional skill, apparently, it seems. Activates against certain targets, other worlders, and not just that. Certain targets and also, whatchamacallit, inspiration, right? I think that's the biggest thing here. Like, Osamu needs to be inspired by the story of that other worlder. So the story has to be big enough to inspire him, and then he can use his power. Like, if there was, I don't know, let's take fucking Kotaro, for example. Not much inspiration there, right? A man who was poor, got money, and is now overusing money. Right? Like, not much in terms of, like, the fall of a man, or corruption, or anything like that. Not a particularly interesting story, not particularly inspiring. So it wouldn't surprise me if Osamu was unable to send him back. Right? But someone doing big things, I guess, like Suzuki here. Now that's inspiring. And also being a very epitome of, a tragic story. Was brought to this world to fight other worlders. I mean, it was implied that other worlders tend to misbehave, so maybe, I mean, there is a chance that that is his purpose here, but I'm not, like, 100% sure. It could be that it simply has to do with the reason of his sadness, and that's how he got his powers. Maybe. I don't know. Or it could be, actually, that some higher being or whatever it is that sends them into this world decided, yeah, enough of those, shitty otherworlders trying to take control and become rulers and whatnot. Time to remove them. Let's send our best man to remove them with the power of depression and philosophy. Will I find anyone else to excite my sensitivities? Probably at least a couple of people, I would say. Interesting that he has no recollection of it, though. Brand new casket. Possible that he has an important role. Yeah, sure, the possibility is here. You must support him. Yeah, changed her tune very quickly. Did he turn out that way because his word granted him more power than he deserved? No. No, not really. I really don't think so. Yeah, who knows? I really don't think so. Would he return to his own world and live a miserable life again? Apparently not. Apparently, what he experienced in this world allowed him to turn a new leaf and finally become a well-adjusted person. And not only that, but also meeting a nice person, right? That matters like a lot. Very often, very often that is like the turning point in life, right? Like when you are just surrounded by shitty people, if you're getting bullied on the daily, and you think life has no meaning and whatnot, but then you meet just one guy who's like, "Hey, I'm not gonna ask. You might have had it rough. Wanna grab a beer someday or something?" And that's all. That's enough, really. Uh, Problem is that people who have those sorts of issues, they rarely tend to be seeking out contact with other people. So chances of them meeting a good person are slim to none. So all they have in their head is everybody I've met was garbage. They've met like 20 people in total in their whole life and they were all garbage, so 100% of them were. But if they were to meet 200 people, then they would see that 180 of them would actually be decent humans. But they don't. And it's kind of like a self-propelling thing, self-propelling cycle of despair, kinda, you could say. Yeah. Lead a good life, Suzuki. Lead a good life. To be continued in the next episode in a couple of days. Okay, so. Can I move a little bit? Yeah, that's better. I moved my camera a little bit so that I'm a little smaller on the screen, and now I'm gonna have to find some new locations. Right, good episode. I like that the power that was given to Osamu is not actually overpowered. I mean, it's overpowered in the sense that nobody else seems to have a power like that, right? And it has a very absolute effect of sending another worlder back. So it is extremely powerful, but it's not overpowered because it has very big limitations put on it. It can only be used against other worlders, right? It can only be used when Osamu is inspired enough. Seemingly, it can't really be used consciously, even, right? Osamu didn't really remember the whole thing. It's just something that happens as if it was the world itself just using Osamu as a means of getting rid of the pests, kinda sorta, right? So it is very limited, but also very powerful, and I like it. I like that this is the power that he got, and not some, being able to write a something into existence, right? Like that would be the obvious, I guess, way to go for his powers, right? Him having write that, and then the pack of wolves turned around and went away, and that actually allowing him to turn back the pack of wolves, right? That would kind of work, would be hella overpowered, but also would be kind of boring, wouldn't it? It would really just be an absolute power, and we can't really have much things to happen if the power is this absolute. This is much better. Cool. I'm kind of glad that Suzuki ended up the way he did. Initially, early on, I really was hoping that he meets very bad end somehow, right? Maybe he gets obliterated by Osamu. Maybe he gets, I don't know, defeated with his own weapon or, something like that, and gets his comeuppance, right? But I'm actually much more fine with this end for him. He got sent, he got a lesson, he got schooled, and then he got sent back. Right? He's not treated as absolutely evil. He's not treated as a complete and utter irredeemable villain. There is potential for redemption in him, and there is an explanation of why he is the way that he is. And that matters a lot in a villain. Or in an antagonist, I guess you could say, because maybe like a little villain, something like that. Brief antagonist, I'm gonna say. Right? I'm glad that he got his, not even redemption, really. Right? He was not redeemed. He was just given another chance. And now it's all up to him to make the most that he can of the resources he's been given during his life in the other world, right? Cool. I actually like how it went. Couple of bullshit like Deus Ex Machina things, right? Like the helmet knocking Tama out, or Melos out of nowhere appearing in a helmet and saving Osamu. But I got kind of used to it in this show, and it doesn't take much away from it, right? Because some of it is comedic, some of it makes sense to a degree, right? Like, we were told ahead of time that the helmet can deflect magic. We were shown beforehand that Melos got into the helmet, right? So everything is set up in place, really. So it really kind of sort of works ultimately. I'm glad that we potentially got a secondary objective, right? Primary objective is, of course, finding Satchan, and to get to that objective, we gotta visit the temples and we gotta find her. And the potential secondary objective is finding the other worlders who are misbehaving and sending them back. I don't think that's gonna be like an official objective. I don't think it's gonna be something where Osamu says, I need to travel the world and send them all back. Absolutely not. But it's kind of a hidden achievement, I guess you could say, right? Like the quest says visit the 4 temples and find Satchan, and then you go to Steam achievements, and there's that send 10 other worlders back, 1 out of 10 completed, right? Kind of thing. That's kind of how it feels. It's cool. I like it. Early on, this show was kind of sort of aimless a little bit, but now it's much better than it was for sure. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it from me for today, for this episode. But you guys, you tell me, what did you think of this episode, of my reaction, my theories, whatever I might have had in the comments down below. No spoilers, please. Spoilers can go to my Discord here, also in the description below. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe to be notified of future videos, not only Isekai Shikkaku, but also Vistoria, Bye Bye Earth, Spice and Wolf, Wasuyu, plenty others coming in the future, QA Isekai. Click the bell to be notified when those videos go up and when I go live, because I do sometimes support the channel if you want monetarily on Patreon down below, where for $10 a month you get early access to non-seasonal shows like Wasu, and for just $1 you get a role on the Discord and a place in the credits. You can also support me directly on YouTube through membership, super thanks, super chats, and if you don't want to spend any money whatsoever, you don't have to. Share my content, spread the word, it costs absolutely nothing and helps the channel a lot. And now, with all of that out of the way, that's gonna be it from me for today. So as always, you guys do all the good stuff, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Cheers! And here's my wonderful Patreons: QB, Without a Nedze, Rainy, Yukiala, Chibi Bro, Dr. Wotaka, Master Marsh, Fuzzle, and Hans Peter. And you can join them if you want without having to get the Isekai, I guess.